Senator Vick.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the senator from 32 yield to a question?
Yes, Senator Tippets.
I would.
Senator Vick, to state your question.
Thank you, Mr. President, and the senator from 32. I have a couple of follow-up questions to some points that were made earlier. If you might, you just, I think in response to a question, said that the exchange could not implement any penalties. And I've read through the bill before. I have not read it this morning yet. Can you point me to where that is in this bill?
Senator Tippets.
Mr. President, Senator, if you'll give me a moment, I'll try to find Mr. President and Senator, I don't know that it says in the bill that they can't assess penalties, but I'll tell you that the way the system works is that noncompliance for the individual mandate to purchase insurance or the penalty against employers for not providing insurance for their employees is all assessed by the federal government. There's no anticipation that the exchange would be involved in that activity at all.
Will he yield for a further question?
Senator Tippets, would you yield further?
Yes, I will yield further, Mr. President.
Senator Vick.
Mr. President and the senator from 32, on line 43 and 44 of page 3, it says one of the duties of the board is to receive funds from any other source. And my question is, does that mean that when they apply for federal grants, that money will not come through the legislature for approval?
Senator Tippets.
Mr. President and Senator, I believe, and again I'm just telling you my perception, is that the exchange would be able to apply for a grant and that would not come to the legislature for approval. Let me make one further comment on your previous question. There's no authority granted in this bill for the exchange to levy penalties as well.
Mr. President, thank you. And will you yield to another question?
I will yield, Mr. President.
Senator Vick.
That was a follow-up because of Senator, I believe it was the senator from 8's comment that they have any authority necessary and appropriate to implement the exchange. So if it wasn't prohibited, I thought maybe it was included. But that's not how you see it?
Senator Tippets.
Mr. President, Senator, you're talking now about the authority to levy penalties?
Yes.
Senator Vick, yes.
Mr. President, Senator, it's my understanding that it's not anticipated they would levy any penalties or assess any penalties, and it's my understanding that they do not have that authority.
Okay, thank you. Will the gentleman yield to another question?
Senator Tippets.
I would yield, Mr. President.
Senator Vick.
Some of the other agencies or boards that we have like this have rules onto how the fee is determined. Why did you decide that it was not appropriate to include language that would either restrict fees or determine how they are determined, any sort of sideboards in this legislation?
Senator Tippets.
Mr. President and Senator, I would not say that there are no sideboards. As far as the determination not to put some restrictions on the amount of fees, certainly wasn't my decision. But those who are making that decision, I'll speak for what I believe they intended. And that was not knowing what the fees were going to need to be. They decided to leave that up to the exchange to allow them to operate as independently as possible, but with the understanding, again, that this legislature can always go in and impose those restrictions if we need to. We could even do that this session if we chose to do that.
That's all for now, Mr. President. Thank you.
Is there further debate?